Spoilers ahead for Lord of the Rings of Power, Episode 5. Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Script Department. Today, Brad and I are delving into Episode 5 of Lord of the Rings of Power, available now on Amazon Prime. But before we do that, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all of those lovely things that we always tell you to do, because it's so great for us. It really, really does help us. You can find us on Apple, on Spotify, on YouTube, all of those good places. If you're an audio listener and you want to see what we look like, then you can go to YouTube, and we have whole videos where it's just the same, but we have our faces up. Can you imagine? I know. But otherwise, you can, if you wanted to, you can buy us a coffee. We love coffee here, especially Brad and I, who are slightly shattered today. So we love coffee to keep us going. So if you wanted to, in the description, you can buy us a coffee, and we can go from there. But Brad, welcome. We are setting sail. Finally, we're setting sail for Middle Earth to go find out what's going on there for Episode 5 of the Rings of Power. I'm going to start off here by reminding you and our listeners that the last episode of this, I said I would be watching for to find out if this was in fact all visuals and all style and no substance. That's the sentence I'm trying to say. And that was, so I've approached this viewing with that very much in mind. What do you think, Brad? What do you think?
I enjoyed it. I think they're doing a lot of building, but it's sort of gone beyond that this time. That the idea that they've put up 3 or 4 fake Saurons, and the one of them's been revealed to not be a Sauron.
Yeah, I love
or the
that.
Sauron. Is it a Sauron or the Sauron?
The Sauron?
But we're slowly getting through these things, and of course it's supposed to be a slow burn. Like Lord of the Rings was never supposed to be a quick thing, right? So I respect that they're methodically going through this. Yes, they just launched. They're on the boat, just about on the boat, and at the end of last episode, it was like, oh, they're going to be on the boat the next episode. So there are a few things where it's like, oh, just get on the boat and go over the sea. Yeah. But there are a few great parts of this, and I'm really, really enjoying the Sauron conversations. It's just hilarious. Like, who is Sauron? One of the best memes I saw was the Rick Dalton, the Rick Dalton meme where it's Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at the TV and he's got a beer. Yeah, and there's a picture of Halbrand, picture of one of the Dark Elves, picture of someone else, and each time it's just him saying Sauron. It's amazing. Sauron.
That's great.
Just brilliant. Yeah, it's I'm enjoying it. I want to see it kick off. I know we're going to get that next episode because the orcs are walking up that hill, and they're definitely tipping the tower on them because that's what they said.
For sure. Yeah.
That tower's falling over onto the orcs because that was what the slightly gilded dialogue said they're going to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm in for this. I'm sitting this out to the end. I know it's slowed a bit in the middle here, but I'm hoping it's worth it.
I think you're right. You know the way I see this as a like a ramp. So we started off really fast, and then in the middle we kind of slowed down a wee bit, but we're at the bottom, but now we're picking up speed and we're going off again. I was overwhelmingly more positive on this episode than I was the last couple. There was real intention behind everything going on. There was a huge amount of, there's been intention behind all of the episodes, to be fair. What I mean by that is it feels as though we're really, like you say, we're building to something now. We're really getting there. Things are beginning to kick off, which is really, really interesting. Introduction of the angular eyebrowed Sauron, which was the most angular eyebrow I've ever seen in my life, which is so impressive. I don't know how that person does that. I can't do it.
It's CG.
Surely not. You wouldn't CG an eyebrow, would you?
Yeah. Why not? They've got the money. Money is not a problem here. Like, if they want a bigger eyebrow, they're going to get a bigger eyebrow.
CG that eyebrow, yo. I loved that. What a terrifying looking shot that was. That was absolutely brilliant. And you know what? The Stranger. I've got some notes here, so we'll run through some bits and bobs. The Stranger interestingly, there is a big conversation around whether the stranger is a good guy or a bad guy, and they are actively addressing that now, rather than it just being a kind of a background kind of discussion for fact the viewer to have. It appears that they are really, really directly addressing that, and the stranger seems to regret the fireflies, which is really, really interesting. Maybe, and I saw that, I was like, oh, okay, perhaps this is perhaps they are going to be okay. Maybe this is the good guy, and then maybe they were pointing a bit too hard at it, and then suddenly, it turns out perhaps he's not, because he freezes her. What do you think about the stranger, Brad? I mean, I will die on that hill that it's not Sauron, but I
don't want to be wrong. I don't want to be wrong. I've moved my Sauron chip over to another one of the characters. It's no longer him. Episode 1 and 2, I was like, oh, that could be Sauron. Like, he's come out of the sky and he's been hiding and he's in a meteor or whatever. I can't remember what I said, but I was, I was 50-50 on it, and now I'm a bit like, I don't know. I think it would, to now do a double or triple fake on that character being him feels a bit, I don't know. I think that'd be a little bit too deceptive of from the writers to take us to and fro so many times on so many different characters.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we're getting a bit of Radagast energy here. Like, the stuff in the beard and the crawling around the woods, and is there because we don't know how big he is.
Yeah, that's true.
We don't know how big he is. We've got no concept of the size because we've only seen him with the Harfoots, and really, we know the size of a hobbit, but are they the same size as a hobbit? We don't know this. So it's are we getting a Radagast here? I've been trying to educate myself on more than the films over the past few weeks, as I've been speaking about. So there's loads and loads and loads of different theories online about who this is. They're not going to make it easy. None of these guys are going to be easy. Who we're guessing is Sauron or is anyone, and I think it's not going to be easy because they are taking liberties with some of the timeline,
absolutely,
and some of the lore, like with the Mithril thing. People have been losing their minds over that, like absolutely losing their minds, because that feels invented, and if it turns out that isn't a lie from the elves to get this stuff, people are just, I don't know what's going to happen. There's going to be like some sort of like Tolkien holy war online.
See, I really like that plot point. I'll come to that in a second, but the on the last note on the stranger there, I would put all of my money on the fact it's not Sauron, just because I just don't think it is. I think I can. There's only one character that I think I can rule out for sure, and I'm absolutely certain it's not Gandalf, because I just think it's too obvious. If it's because they've given him a grey cloak, they've given him a grey beard, they've given him grey stuff, they put him with the Harfoot's hobbit stand-ins. From a narrative point of view, they've done all of these things, and I think if it turned out to be Gandalf, I'd just be like, oh, okay, well, yeah, clearly, but it's not very interesting, is it? I think I am almost certain of the fact it's not Gandalf, but could be Saruman, could be Radagast, as you say. There are two blue wizards knocking around that we've seen hide nor hair of throughout most of, and also I think blue wizardry would be a really interesting thing, because the Tolkien himself contradicted himself constantly about who the blue wizards are, what their names are, even when they arrived, all of these things. So I think you could conceivably have a blue wizard, perhaps there's another blue wizard to come, arrive in Middle Earth, and you could do your own thing with that, whereas other things are quite well established. So I don't know. That's what I
mean, there are things that are so clear in here, like he's not a Balrog. He's not the Balrog we saw in the trailer, and there are such clear signposts in some of this show about where it's going and what's going to happen. The fact that Adar is talking about the sun's going to go away. So so they're going to blow the top of Mount Doom to make Mordor, so the orcs can walk around in the shade. Great, I can see what you're saying there, but there's so much of it in the dark. we both know how hard it is to move those pieces around in the dark and then to reveal them and to
Yeah,
not have people annoyed and feel that they've been deceived by the script.
sure,
So
sure.
I'm hoping the writing isn't a problem in this one, because that's what we're here for.
100%. How do you feel generally about the writing? Because there is a kind of a consensus online. Perhaps consensus is the wrong way of putting that, actually. But there are some conversations online that talk about the dialogue being pretty naff, and
Mm.
the kind of the plot points not really working, things like that. I think that a lot of the time, people conflate dialogue with writing, in the sense that, oh well, the dialogue's not very good, so the writing's terrible, which is of course not. The dialogue is like the last thing you do. It's the thing that
Mm.
is, it's the set dressing on top of the dense, lovely, and luscious cake, is actually all the dialogue is. But it's,
Yeah.
what do you think about the writing so far?
So, as far as the dialogue's concerned in the writing, I think I'm quite agnostic about it at this
Mhm.
point, because there's a poetry to Tolkien, the way that the characters speak, and just how every word, like, you know sort of, there's a patter to the next, and it's beautifully written. And that, I think, that is in some of this dialogue. There's some of the monologues and the speech in Numenor, for example, to rally everyone. Like, I was like, okay,
We go,
there's
yeah.
some really solid writing here from a character level. And then there are really big sways in the other direction, from like the Southlanders, the working class Numenorians, and all of this kind of stuff, where it isn't as polished.
Yeah.
But I think that's because they're writing from character. I don't think those characters would have polished vocabularies. That's the whole point of it. So I think they're breaking away from that language when it sort of suits the narrative.
Hmm.
I Yeah, as not a big solid Tolkien fan, like, I'm not a I'm only just educating myself on the history and stuff like that, and it's yeah, I don't feel as strongly about that as I know some people online do.
Absolutely. Tolkien was uh, language for Tolkien was just such an important thing. It was, there are big, strong arguments that actually the writing of the Lord of the Rings was more, certainly, you get to the Silmarillion and things like that, was more of an academic exercise than it ever was actually a book that should to be read. Um, don't at me. I know that's not the case. I'm making a point. The thing I'm saying is that language is incredibly important to
Mm,
Tolkien, and so I understand why people are not quite liking it. I I tend to agree with you. I think that the way the use of language is varied is good. It's probably correct. I do think that sometimes there are things that just don't feel like they quite fit. For example, I can't see the word mum ever appearing in like this kind of era of fantasy. Like, and what's his face calls Bronwyn mum. I'm saying that mum.
yeah.
Oh God! I mean, where are we? What is this? Like, I don't know. I just that didn't really track for me. But and I think that's one part of a bigger point that I can see people making. But it's, yeah, I don't know. I think it's good, and I think the structural stuff, I think, more than makes up for any kind of jitters in dialogue, because it
Mm,
feels incredibly well thought out. Like, you can feel the beats as they're moving along, and you can also feel where they skip beats or move beats. I think you can feel that they've done that intentionally as well, which is a really interesting thing. I love it, love it, love it, love it when you get a writer that comes along and just does something you're not quite expecting, but you know that they're
mm,
doing it for a good reason. And I feel as though that happens on a couple of occasions here as well. So
mm.
I'm pretty favourable on the writing overall, and I think the intention behind it appears to be pretty good. So
I think they've spent a lot of time on Easter eggs and breadcrumbs and
mhm,
things like that, just knocking around, and
yeah,
some of them are complete red herrings, and that's the whole point of it. But there are so many of them. Even seeing Halbrand forging really good weapons.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
oh yeah, there he is. There's Sauron, and it's like maybe he's just good at forging weapons. We don't know. Which
Yeah,
is, it's the whole just the way they spent the time on seeing him in the forge, and it was like, okay, they're either trying to say this is Sauron hiding,
yeah.
or we're taking the piss out of you guys, and we're going to make you think it's Sauron. And it's like, okay, cool.
Which I'm all for, to be
I can
honest.
see that happening, and I'm enjoying, I'm enjoying being led along. Like, oh,
Yeah.
maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. I'm not going to put all my eggs in one basket.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably the right thing to do. Going back to the Mithril then, so this is a major reveal in this episode that the Mithril is, so they say, is created by this great battle, and the Balrog in that section. I mean, that's a Peter Jackson era Balrog. That's literally, it's like a carbon copy of it. It's like, oh, okay, you're just
Yeah,
doing that. That's fair enough. I'm really into it. Like,
yeah.
that's clearly what Balrogs look like, and in visual mediums, like, which I think is really interesting. And I wonder if
Mm.
because obviously we know that the Mithril is in the mountain where it's in Khazad-dûm, which is where in the Fellowship of the Ring, the Mines of Moria, blah 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 blah. The dwarves delved greedily and too deep, and while they were looking for Mithril, and they found this Balrog. So the question, I suppose, is the Balrog, as part of that, is that the Balrog that Gandalf
It's totally the
later
Balrog. That is the what do they call him? Durin's Bane.
Durin's Bane?
That
Yeah,
is him. That's That's it. Has to be.
yeah.
Because there's not, they're not exactly like just knocking around down the pub, are they? There's not, they're not that common. So, and this was one of what 2 or 3 left in the whole Middle Earth or something at the
Something
time,
like
or
that.
maybe it's the last one.
Yeah.
I'm again, I'm still polishing up on my history,
It's
but
okay.
it's
Yeah.
totally the same one. So
Mhm.
I understand why it looks almost identical, because why would it not be?
Why would it not
Like,
be?
why would they
I
change
think.
it? Like, we know what it looks like. We've seen
Yeah,
it.
yeah. But I think it's a really interesting signposter for their intention, though. Is I think the thing, because they've made points of saying that, this is different. This is a different thing. They've cast someone who looks quite a lot like Hugo Weaving when he was a little bit younger. They cast someone who looks not dissimilar from Kate Blanchett in these two things, and now they've created a Balrog that looks identical. So it's interesting to kind of interpret that as is this a direct prequel to the Jackson era Lord of the Rings films, or
Interesting, isn't it?
or is it not? I mean, surely it is. I don't know why we're pretending like it's not at this stage.
Well, I think it is. I mean, it's hard. It's really hard to do until someone says, "Yes, definitely a prequel to that exact property."
Mm,
It's always going to be a conversation. But I can't, even if they don't ever say it, I can't see how it's not going to be related to it, because
sure.
it's the same history, it's the same timeline, it's the same text, it's the same original source material that's inspired it, and they're doing it in a very, very, very similar way, and they've got the same characters in it. They've not yet broken the canon of the films,
Sure.
and that's probably very intentional. I mean, I know it's a long time before, but they still haven't broken anything really substantial enough for people to go, hang on a minute, that's, that can't be this because of X, Y, and Z. I
Mm,
know from, the original um literature, like the original Tolkien written stuff, yeah, there's loads of stuff that's been broken, but as far as the films are concerned, there's no one, there's no smoking gun yet going, look, it
mm.
can't be a prequel
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
that, and there's nothing yet.
And I think for me, that's how I'm trying to look at this. Is that the yes, it is an interpretation of text, but it's done in a visual medium. So surely the nearest comparison to this has to be those the Jackson films, and how that works. So I think that for me, the films and the books have always stood as entirely separate things.
Hmm.
Because maybe that's just because I'm a writer and I know how that works, but also this stands apart as well to the and all of the literature around the Second Age of Middle Earth. So yeah, I agree. I think I don't know. It's just interesting. It's going to be interesting to kind of unpack this as it goes along, and find those similarities and differences. Perhaps there are,
Yeah.
perhaps there will be differences, but that'll be interesting. I really enjoyed seeing Galadriel have a bit of fun when she was toying with the Numenorian guard, and
Yeah.
messing about with them, and like she just keeps like slamming this guy's guy in the neck with her sword. Just all over and over and over and over again. Like it's brilliantly reminiscent of like the previous kind of elf style of fighting that we've seen. Again,
Yeah.
referring backwards to the Jackson films, but also within its own kind of world. And it just, I don't know. I just think it's lovely. She doesn't even appear to be making any kind of effort in her movement. She's just kind of going, yeah, well, that's going to be there, and yeah, that's there, and that's there. I mean, I'm stronger than
Mm.
you, and I kind of know what you're going to do. So why are we even doing this? It's
Yeah. I
very,
mean, there's been only 2 or 3 times since she jumped off that ship that she has seemed alive
yeah,
or even engaged, fully engaged in the thing. Like she's quite, you can tell she's very internalized, and I
mm,
think that's intentional. But when you
absolutely,
see her on the beach on the horse, sword fighting, couple of blips on the raft when she's facing down the storm,
mm,
and you can see, oh right, she is kind of like a PTSD adrenaline junkie.
for sure. Well,
Like
well, she
she's
is,
seen a
yeah.
lot, and she's only at home at war at this time.
Mm. And
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 I found it fascinating. Well, I did talk to someone actually, and they were like, what if any of those swings connected, any of them connected, like they would have
yeah,
killed
yeah,
her.
it's
They
quite
were
intense.
really swinging at her. It's like training. Like what?
Yeah.
What if
What
they'd
are you
have just
doing?
killed him? Would they just like, oh goodness, swept her under the
Well,
rug and just ignored? Let's all stay at home now.
yeah. I mean, does Elendil like still promote that guy? Is he still like, you killed her. Now you actually get to be general now. You know? What? Yeah, that's quite intense, isn't it? But we get that
Yeah.
confirmation from her own mouth. Speaking in terms of writing there, how do you feel about the fact that we actually have her admitting now to somebody, I can't stop, I
Mm.
can't do this, I can't do that. W- w- how do you feel? What do you think about that?
I really liked the admission. For me, it felt like it was almost in the wrong place.
Mm,
It felt like she was trying to say it, but he wasn't asking her to. I
yeah,
felt it was an unusual place. Like she was evidently trying to um level with them. It was with Halbrand, wasn't it?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Is that yeah, yeah. So she was trying to level with him and get him to join them. But he was very disinterested at the time. Like for me, it felt weird, but I like the fact that she said it now.
Yeah.
Like it feels like she's going to go through it, at least begin through a bigger arc of character development because she
Mm.
hasn't really had that yet.
No,
She had a moment where she decided to jump off a ship, but then she was just the same character
yeah.
when she was in the water. Like she was the same. So to see her now growing and changing is like okay. Like hopefully we are going to get some arc because people are really upset if they're upset about anything to do with Galadriel. It's the fact that she doesn't seem to be learning or changing.
Mm,
And I know elves live for a lot longer, so time will probably be seen very differently to them and how they develop. But as a viewer, knowing how we've seen things happen, in other films and other TV shows, there's a pattern, and there's a structure to things. And the fact that she isn't developing or hasn't developed yet is a
mm,
bit like, oh, okay,
yeah.
you best do quite a lot of development in the next 3 episodes.
See, I'm really into it. I'm really into the fact that she hasn't developed, that she's still that same person, because that's exactly what PTSD does. It stunts you. Like you don't
Mm,
learn because you're so trapped in that time, in that moment, in that trauma, whatever it might be. You can't take on new ideas. You can't learn. You can't do any of that. And so I think that for me, I almost wish she hadn't said it, because I think
mm,
because I knew it would, because we know it's there, right? We know that that's what's going on in her head, and I feel as though by announcing that at the time, it was weird, and I think you're right about the timing of it, because how Brand was just not that into it.
Mm,
I think maybe maybe that's the jarring element there, but I do think that I would have preferred that to come later, and to see her, because we've had those little moments of joy that seep out and then she goes back into a thing. I think I would have preferred to see that, like finale, everything's going really badly wrong, something like that. And and then finally she comes out and she says, or she's like running and running, she's pursuing something and she's literally about to be killed. And he's like, what the fuck are you doing, man? Like, stop
mm.
doing this. You can't take him down on your own. And then she spins around and goes, because I can't stop. Or, that big kind of a moment like that. I think, I don't know. I think it would have been a little more earned than, and more of an emotional outcry, rather than I can't stop. Really, it's tough, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, I don't know, and I'm being facetious there. That's not how that was done. She's far too good of an actor for that to happen. But the yeah, I don't know about the placing of it, and I would have preferred, I think, that to happen a little later on. But it's interesting,
Mm.
regardless. It's interesting that she is now beginning to grow and beginning to heal, perhaps, which is good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Agreed.
good. That's excellent. Then also we're getting some like political intrigue going on here. We've got big beardy Jack Black, who is
Yes.
looking at his political aspirations. I tell you what, I mean, Lord of the Rings, your Game of Thrones is showing a little bit there. That was
Yes.
very, very, very Varys and Littlefingery, wasn't it? I quite liked it.
Yeah. I mean, he's playing a lot of games. It was very subtle in the last episode, but the fact you've got the was he in a metal worker, the guy who was going elf lover, the
Oh
big
yeah,
dude
yeah,
who got punched in the face quite a lot. Him, he was trying to rally the troops and say, we need to stand up against these invading elves taking our jobs and all that kind of stuff. Then Jack Black comes in and does his speech, and then very quickly after, he goes and shakes the guy's hand really quickly, and then moves on. And it's like he's set him up, like he's paid him to be there,
yeah, for sure.
so then he can do this
Sure.
big speech, and everyone gets behind him, and you can see that. Yeah, there's a lot of posturing, and
Mm.
yeah,
It's cool.
there's a lot of little finger in there, how he's going through the market and shaking everyone's hands and
Yeah,
stuff.
and I like it because I think there is something about this version of Middle Earth that does feel a bit more grounded and a little bit more real. And I think going to reference that conversation we had about dialogue there, I think that the where it does move away from the dialogue, it does make it feel a little bit grounded. The stuff that the dialogue as it is in Lord of the Rings, and kind of these great moments are wonderful and they're very, very beautiful, but it's not real, and you can't connect with it on a sort of beyond
Mm.
kind of admiration. In the same way, you go and listen to Shakespeare, you can't then, you can't imagine sitting down with one of those characters and kind of, you're not going to sit down with Hamlet and have a pint. You are, however, going to perhaps sit down with Jack Black and have a pint and listen to him
Yeah,
about what he's doing. And um
yeah,
I mean, I think it's interesting, and I do like the fact that where we have more time to explore this world. I mean, we are already, so what is it, 9 hours worth of film for the original trilogy extended, I believe, 9 or 10
yeah.
hours. So we are approaching. So we're already like at the point where we've gone past um, the Fellowship, and we're most of the way through the Two Towers at this stage as well.
Mm.
So we are well and truly past the original trilogy's midpoint, and so we can dig down so much more into this information and the texture and the nuance and things like that. And so it was fun. I like Littlefinger Jack Black popping up in Middle Earth. I'm into it.
It's good. Yeah.
It is good. um, and then looking again at the Mithril element here, we've got this kind of real kind of twist, I'd say, to it ups the personal stakes in a big way, because now
Mm.
it's, oh, and actually before we go any further, Durin with the table and that whole
That's
business
amazing.
of, oh
That was brilliant, and the shaking in his voice.
Yeah,
So it looked like he was really emotional about it, and then he told Elrond, and Elrond really liked it.
he
I
loved it.
loved that.
He
That
loved it.
showed like such a strength in their relationship, and you were like, oh, okay, that's more of who they are. I loved seeing that moment. I was like, yeah, he's in on that. He could have gone and told,
He could
no,
have
no,
done.
keep the table. He's just
Yeah,
lying.
because I was watching it and I was thinking that's so dark. Are they suggesting that they've like taken the like a dwarven tomb? Have they
Yeah,
desecrated something? Have they like taken the tombstone from this? I think that's
yeah,
so dark. What the hell is that? Oh no, it's a joke. I loved that, and that little character moment between them, and then where Elrond confides in Durin and says, look, this has happened, and I'm really really sorry, but it's actually quite important that we figure this out because my race is going to die. I
yeah,
think it was lovely, and it could have so they could have so easily gone down, and I was worried they were going to go down the path of Elrond kind of sneaking around and Durin suspecting him
mm,
sneaking around and all this that and the other, and it just wouldn't have been. It would have been fine, I'm sure, but like I just wouldn't have enjoyed it as much. This honesty and this wisdom is so so great to see.
yeah. I don't think they got time for the sneaking about anyway. Like Mount Doom's going to go off. Like there's a Balrog crawling around somewhere. Like they
Fair
they
point.
haven't
That's
got
a fair
time for
point.
that storyline. They need to get on with it. So I'm happy that that was resolved. Because personally for me, like those they're not cringeworthy. They're just hard to watch. Where
Mm,
they're friends potentially falling apart, and it's just I don't like I don't like
yeah,
seeing that. I'm like,
yeah.
oh thank God they're not going to do that storyline. I like that they're still
I
friends.
I agree. It's quite
Yeah.
interesting because of all of the plot lines, I feel like this one and this episode's all about forward motion, but
Mm.
that in particular, the dwarven elven plot line has the most kind of speed about it, I think, because they keep doing this thing. They go, "Oh, look, in the box, we've got this thing. What could it be?" Next episode, Mithril. And then they're like, "Oh, no, something terrible is happening. What could it be?" Trees dying. Oh, no, and it's this they keep setting stuff up and then resolving it very quickly afterwards,
Yeah.
which I quite like when you have the set in amongst this big, big world of mystery. That there is an area where they're like, "Oh, what is it?" That's this. Don't worry about it. There's enough of that going on. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it very much that they're doing that, and I could watch Elrond and Durin wandering through the forest, like
Yeah.
having a joke with each other forever. I'm into that.
Yeah, I'm hoping we're getting a Legolas Gimli relationship here because you can see they are going to rip the piss out of each other quite a lot
Mhm.
more as it goes on.
Absolutely.
The one thing that I keep going around in my head is like the timeline of the fall of Khazad-dûm, and that Elrond will almost certainly be there or know exactly what happens, and then the fact that the Fellowship like don't know when they get to Moria, and like it's
They do
there's
though.
something there. I'm like, how are they going to do that? Is that a important like
I'm
thing?
sure
Because
they
Gimli
do
doesn't
though.
know. Gimli has no idea that Khazad-dûm has fallen. He's like, there's going to be
Yeah.
malt beer and meat off the bone, and he gets in there and goes, ah, everyone's dead. Where have
And
they
they
all gone?
call it
And it's
a
like,
mine. A
what is
mine.
it like? How many years is it difference? Like 100? Is it 50? I don't know the
Uh,
exact
I don't know, truth be
space
told. Me.
spacing, but surely there would be some knowledge of it. That for me, I'm like, well, does it? Is it
It's
buried? Do
thousands of
people
years,
not
actually. It's
know?
thousands of years because you've got to.
Is it thousands?
It's thousands, yeah, because the Harfoots need to evolve into
Oh yeah,
hobbits yet, and also you think about um
of course, yeah.
the prelude to the first Lord of the Rings film. The all of the events. I think it's 1,000 years ago. I think the fall of Sauron um, is or 2,000 maybe. I don't know. It's in his
So
thousands,
even then, surely Gimli would know if it was 2,000 years ago.
but
He
I don't
doesn't
think
know
that
when he gets
happened
there.
then. I don't think that happened then though. I don't think we get to see the no, we don't. No, we can't do because Balin, who's the guy from the Hobbit, he goes off and founds Moria, and he takes Moria back from
Right.
goblins or dwarves, not dwarves, sorry, or orcs or whatever they are. And so I don't, and Gandalf says Saruman does that little thing where he's talking to Gandalf across the mountains and everything. And he says, "You know what they found within the mountain. The dwarves dwell too deep," and things like that. So I think Gandalf knows what's there, and so I guess there must be some kind of knowledge of what's gone on. But I don't think anything to do. I don't think the fall of Moria has anything to do with the Balrog. I think that's to do with dwarves and what's wrong with me? Orcs and goblins and things like that.
I know, but we're going to see a Balrog. We know we are. There's one in the trailer. We're going to see one, unless it's a flashback. Like I don't. This is what I mean. Like about trying to educate yourself on the timeline.
Yeah.
And then they've changed the timeline, but it's got the same stuff in it. Like it's really hard to keep up.
This is the thing. Don't worry about it, because it's like you shouldn't have to. I'm not saying don't go read all of Tolkien's stuff, because it's great, you should. But like, you should be able to just watch this without needing to like feel the need to do that. Which brings us around to that conversation we were having last week. I don't know how I feel about that really, but it's I think. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I suspect it could be that they find a Balrog there, and the Balrog comes up, and one of the things they have to do is defeat the Balrog, and they lock him away behind a big mithril cage or something, and then and then he stays there for a couple of thousand years or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what
it's a question we're asking before we've seen the Balrog, which is quite. The writers will have known that, but I mean, I'm loving the reading up on various things, and this has made me do it far more than the films did.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot. It goes a lot further into the history, and it feels like it's going to go on a lot longer. Like, of course, the films did touch on stuff that happened in the past and that may happen in the future, but this has really drawn me into it. One interesting thing I did find out was my own heritage within the world of Tolkien. So I read a few threads and a little bit of stuff about the areas that Tolkien lived in, and that inspired various parts of Lord of the Rings and the associated books that he wrote. And there's a lot of stuff in Oxford, and there's a lot of stuff in Birmingham. And I'm from the Midlands, a Midlander. He was apparently. I mean, everyone's got a story about it's my area that inspired this. Apparently, the Black Country inspired Mordor. So the Black Country was the very smoggy area that there were coal mining, loads of industry, big part of the Industrial Revolution. And I'm from Walsall, which is right in the middle of the Black Country.
There you go.
So I am a treacherous Morgoth supporting Southlander.
You are a treacherous Morgoth supporting Southlander.
I'm a Southlander.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Be gone, fell beast.
I quite like that. I was like, yes, there I am.
That's quite cool.
I'm that bartender guy that has to kill the other kids. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, yay, great. Oh man, that's really funny. Yeah, I love that. Well, look, I mean, this is keep reading stuff, because it's all the fun, and these are gonna, I think, be really interesting to see kind of how they approach things, what they do with it, etc. So hopefully we'll get to see that. I really enjoyed this episode. I've enjoyed this one the most since the first two, and just because it feels as though we getting the payoff for the work we did in those middle few, and we're getting somewhere now. We've got 3 episodes left, I believe, 3 episodes left from here. So I expect now we're going to get into some real action set pieces, or perhaps we'll have a traveling episode, but hopefully we'll start getting.
I think next step's going to be a big one. I'd bet half of my Sauron chips on that. It's going to be a big one. There's going to be something epic that happens. It has to. Otherwise, I think they might miss the beat. I think there's going to have to be, whether it's the landing, whether it's the tower collapsing, whether it's something to do in the Southlands. Like, there's going to be a big thing. Like, it has to happen. Otherwise, they might miss their chance.
They might. Brad, I think we did it. Thank you so much for chatting the Rings of Power today with me. This is I always look forward to these. It's nice to unpack. It's kind of Tolkien therapy that we do here, so I quite like it. So thank you very much for that, and thank you everybody for listening, watching, whatever it is you might be doing. Remember, we have other episodes of this knocking around. We also have 3 episodes of Screenwriters Rewatch on those original films as well. And I believe, did you do a great Hollywood rewrite on The Hobbit?
We did great Hollywood rewrite on The Hobbit. I also participated, I think it was in Two Towers, in the Lord of the Rings week that we did, which was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun when we did the Lord of the Rings week. So you can go and check all of that stuff out. The playlists there will be playlists on YouTube for sure. I can't tell you about Spotify or Apple or anything, but there are Lord of the Ringsy playlists that will definitely be knocking around for those things. So go check them out. We'll be back next week for more of that good stuff. So until then, go read some books, because there's loads of them out there, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys. Bye bye.